of the traits that every leader is going to have to address is humility. On the one hand, we ask leaders to be in charge. We ask them to go forward. We often have them in front of a crowd doing the kinds of things where attention accrues to them. But at the same time, we expect Christians to have humility. I want to talk a little bit about how we can have both humility and at the same time exert leadership. The best description of this comes from a scholar named Jim Collins. He's a secular scholar, and he spent time studying secular leaders. And you would think that the stereotype of a secular leader is somebody who grabs the authority and runs with it. And that was what most people expected him to find. But as he did his research, he found that what he called a level 5 leader, a leader who is particularly good at leading organizations that will make a difference, they found that they had two traits that don't normally go together. On the one hand, a tremendous personal humility. On the other hand, an almost arrogant confidence about what we can accomplish together. So it's personal humility, but communal confidence. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and how to instill that. The example that I have of that is a person named Hugh Dupree. Many of you would probably heard of Max Dupree, who was the chair of or the president of Herman Miller and the chairman of the board for Fuller Seminary. Well, Hugh Dupree is his older brother. And as a matter of fact, the chair that I have at Fuller is the Hugh Dupree Chair of Leadership, named for him. And Hugh tells a story of when he was president of Herman Miller. One of the things that Herman Miller has is that they design furniture. And so the most innovative, the most important person in the organization is the head designer. And at one point they had had for a generation a head designer, and he was getting close to retirement. And so what they did is they brought in another designer to apprentice with this guy for a couple of years, so then he could then take over the head designing role. But a problem happened. After that first year of those two working together, it became clear that their egos were clashing with each other and they weren't going to be able to work together. So you have one experienced person from whom the company's making a lot of money, and a new guy. Well, it became very clear the new guy was going to have to go. So Hugh Dupree, the president, calls the new guy into his office and they talk together. The new guy understands he's going to have to go. That's the way it's going to be. And so Hugh asks him, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I'm probably going to take a little bit of the money that I've made from this and find some investor that can stake me a claim. And I'll go back to Wisconsin, where I'm from, and I'll convert my father's barn into a shop. And I'll spend a year creating stuff. I'll just do the work that I need to do. And then at the end of that, I'll come and I'll go to various companies and see if anybody wants to buy my wares." Hugh thinks for a second and he says, "How much money is that going to take you?" And he says, "Well, I'll have to find a couple of investors, $1 million or $2 million. He says, "What if I staked you? What if we staked you?" Now, you have to recognize, this is the company that is right at that moment firing this guy. And they're turning to him and said, "What if we staked you $1 million?" So they gave him $1 million and said, "We just want the right to look at the whatever it is you come up with. We want it first." So what happens is the guy spends a year, he comes back and he's got an idea. They work, they talk through it. The idea is for a particular kind of a chair. That chair eventually over the course of many years goes through many kinds of revisions, and it ends up being what is now called the Aeron chair. The Aeron chair is the best-selling chair for executives. Most of you would have recognized it as the black mesh chair that shows up in every television show where you see a high-end executive. It is the great seller. So here we have this president who staked a guy $1 million at exactly the moment no one would have expected him to do it. And he reaps a huge benefit. How does he tell that story? That's what's so interesting. Every other president you're going to see of an organization, they'll tell that story by, the point is, look at me. I picked this guy out, and when everybody else wouldn't have bet on him, I bet on him. Isn't this great? That's not how Hugh Dupree tells the story. Instead, he tells the story by saying, look at how lucky I am. I had this one great designer, and then another one comes along, and we get this great best-selling Aeron chair, and we make all this money. And he tells the story as if he is just an innocent bystander who happened to be along for the ride as these excellent people did wonderful things. And that's what we mean by level 5 leadership. An incredible personal humility and an absolute, almost arrogant confidence. The kind of confidence that bets $1 million. An almost arrogant confidence about what we can accomplish together.